Welcome to World News. Tonight's salary cap. President Obama sets limits on top executive pay for companies getting help from the taxpayers. Pet project. Congress debates spending hundreds of billions to stimulate the economy. But when is a project practical? And when is it pork? Cold case. A possible break in the investigation of poisoned Tylenol, which killed 7 people 27 years ago. And on target, a radical way to fight a deadly cancer, bombarding tumors with 10 times the normal amount of chemotherapy. It's medicine on the cutting edge.
From ABC News headquarters, this is World News with Charles Gibson.
Good evening. Last week, the president lashed out at Wall Street executives at their bonuses and their salaries when their companies need huge infusions of federal dollars to survive. He called it the height of irresponsibility and shameful. Today, he took action. Financial institutions, he said, taking money from the federal government to remain solvent are going to have to play by government rules. The president imposed a limit of $500,000 on the salaries for top executives of those companies. Jake Tapper is at the White House with details. Good evening, Jake.
Good evening, Charlie. Well, next week, President Obama will announce how he intends to spend the $350 billion in the second round of funds to stabilize the financial sector. But today he made it very clear that any salaries of any executives from Wall Street companies that accept that funds will be under close scrutiny.
Widespread.
Today, President Obama and Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner outlined aggressive steps to stop what many Americans see as inexcusable.
For top executives to award themselves these kinds of compensation packages in the midst of this economic crisis isn't just bad taste, it's bad strategy, and I will not tolerate it as president.
The only companies impacted are those that take government rescue funds. In the future, the rules are not retroactive. The strictest limits are for top executives of banks in danger of going under that get big government rescues, like AIG, Bank of America, and Citigroup. Executive compensation for those companies is capped at $500,000 a year. Additional payments can be made in stocks, but only ones that can be cashed when the money is paid back to taxpayers. For companies that receive taxpayer funds but are in less dire but still struggling circumstances, executives can opt out of the $500,000 cap, but only if they disclose compensation and submit the salaries and bonuses to non-binding shareholder votes. On Wall Street and in the financial sector today, concern.
You want to make sure you don't lose some of your top talent.
Because government should stay out of free enterprise. Government should stay out of markets. They do a horrible job of it.
Another rule President Obama introduced today requires executives to officially sign off on and post on the company website purchases of luxury items such as new airplanes, office renovations, parties and conferences. Items that would not be banned under the new rules, but they would have to be disclosed. These rules would not prevent any of those from happening.
By putting those expenditures up on a website for the news media and for the American public to see, I think will have a great impact on the behavior of many in business.
Obama administration officials say they're confident that all that sunshine, Charlie, will change executive behavior. Charlie.
Jake Tapper reporting from the White House lawn tonight. Thank you to you. Meanwhile, the mainstay of the president's plan to restore the economy, the over $800 billion stimulus plan, continues to be debated in the Senate. The president said again today his plan is not perfect, but added, let's not make the perfect the enemy of the essential. The plan is being debated this week, but most of the real negotiating is taking place outside the Senate chambers. So George Stephanopoulos, host of This Week, is here. George, yesterday when we interviewed him, the president said there's 535 members of Congress, and you get the sense there are more than 535 ideas of what this stimulus bill should contain. And you get the sense that he's right. There's no consensus yet on what this bill should contain.
Not at all, Charlie. And if the vote were held in the Senate right now, it would not pass the Senate. So Senate Democratic leaders and the White House are working with a small centrist group of Republicans and Democrats to try to come up with an amendment that addresses their concerns that too much of the spending just isn't stimulus. I should add, though, Charlie, that the Senate Democratic leader, Harry Reid, has assured the president that he will pass such an amendment and get this bill passed by this weekend.
What would the amendment be?
likely to scrub some of this most unpopular spending, things like the National Endowment for the Arts and other programs that these senators say just aren't stimulative enough. The president told Republican senators today, Senators Olympia Snowe and Susan Collins of Maine, that the bill has to be scrubbed. One thing he did insist, though, Charlie, he said that it has to be at least $800 billion. He said any less than that will not do what the economy needs right now.
And I gather he's dealing with just a few Republicans, just a handful that he hopes maybe will come on board. There was, I gather, some hope that Senator McCain might be a help in all this. Is the man he defeated in the election, and yet I gather McCain's not going along.
That is not going to happen, Charlie. Senator McCain is very much against this bill. He says it's too much spending, not enough tax cuts. He wants about a $400 billion bill. The president is targeting a group of about 6 at most Republicans. Senate sources say they need at least 3 of those Republicans to go along to pass this bill this weekend.
All right, George Stephanopoulos, thanks, down from Washington. A delegation of the nation's mayors was at the White House today presenting a list of projects which they say are ready-made to create jobs, real stimulus. All they need is funding. But not all projects are created equal. One mayor's job-creating building project may be a critic's concept of pork. So here's ABC's Lisa Stark.
What do Amtrak, fire stations, golf courses, aging computer systems, and butterflies all have in common? They're all programs vying for stimulus money. They're also examples of projects that are generating debate. Take the $500 million in the bill to improve and build local fire stations. Does that belong in a stimulus package? It will certainly add jobs. Supporters estimate about 4,800 of them.
That is exactly the kind of program that you want to see in an economic recovery package. Creates jobs in the short term, sets the foundation for long-term growth.
What about the $125 million to upgrade Washington, D.C.'s aging sewer system? The city says that'll mean 260 new jobs, but others wonder if it's just a gift to the district.
Will it benefit the most people for the least amount of money? And repairing one sewer system over another is not necessarily the best way to spend that money.
The agency that oversees farm subsidies would get $100 million to replace aging computers. Some say that's no stimulus. The agency insists it would hire 300 new workers to make it happen.
Then there are the 18,750 projects on the wish list put together by the nation's mayors. Some of those projects are raising eyebrows,
including a park in Boynton Beach, Florida, with a butterfly garden, or 3 aquatic centers in Shreveport, Louisiana, and for Lincoln, Nebraska's city golf course, an environmentally friendly clubhouse. The mayors at the White House today said every one of these projects would generate dozens of jobs.
It might sound like from Washington, pork barrel, but it might very well be needed there. And so those individual choices sometimes are taken out of context.
This is exactly the kind of debate, pork or paycheck, that's going on in the halls of Congress. Lisa Stark, ABC News, Washington.
Congress is giving the country an extra 4 months to get ready for the switchover from analog to digital TV. With the deadline looming, the House followed the Senate and voted today to delay the digital TV transition until June 12th. An estimated 6.5 million households still are unprepared for the conversion. Investors who lost money with Bernard Madoff may be getting something back. A trustee liquidating Madoff's investment firm today said about $950 million has been recovered. It's a fraction of the amount involved. Meanwhile, in Washington, a man by the name of Harry Markopoulos, a whistleblower in the Madoff case, told House lawmakers that securities regulators repeatedly ignored his warnings about the alleged $50 billion scheme. The FBI says there are new leads tonight in a 27-year-old cold case, the fatal poisoning case from 1982 in which Tylenol capsules were laced with cyanide. That case sparked nationwide fear and led to changes in the way drugs and food are packaged in this country. 7 people in the Chicago area died. And our chief investigative correspondent, Brian Ross, is here tonight. Brian, what are the new leads?
Well, Charlie, FBI officials say that there are no people in custody, no charges brought, no arrest imminent. But today, agents raided the home of a 62-year-old man in Cambridge, Massachusetts, who had a role in the case 12 years ago. James Lewis was convicted of sending extortion letters to Johnson & Johnson, the makers of Tylenol. He always denied and has continued to deny on his websites and while he was in prison even that he had a role in actually tampering with the Tylenol pills. He says his words have been taken out of context, but right now he is under some very serious scrutiny by the FBI.
And as you point out, was writing these letters. He's been dropping hints along the way that have intrigued people who are investigating this case. So why are they now saying there are new leads as opposed to in the past?
Well, the FBI says this cold case began to break open again on the 25th anniversary 2 years ago when they received a number of tips which seem to have led to Mr. Lewis. He says his words have been taken out of context, of course, but those tips about the unsolved murders, no one's been charged in the murders, have now led to this new scrutiny.
And as I mentioned, all of this did change the way we get our medicines and our foods, much more tightly packaged.
And you recall the nationwide scare about Tylenol went on for months.
Indeed I do. Brian Ross, thanks very much. And a car bomb explosion in Arkansas has critically injured the head of that state's medical board. Police in West Memphis, Arkansas, say the blast that wounded Dr. Trent Pierce could be heard a mile away, and that they don't know if Pierce was being specifically targeted. Still ahead on World News, the Pope's latest public relations disaster, a bishop who denies the Holocaust. Our closer look. A radical cancer treatment showing real promise. That's medicine on the cutting edge. And I Spy, We All Spy. Our reporter tests out new technology that can let people find you anywhere and anytime.
This is World News with Charles Gibson, brought to you by Thermacare Heat Wraps.
Tonight, we have a closer look at the latest controversy swirling around Pope Benedict and at the Vatican's attempt at damage control. Anger erupted when the Pope opened the door recently for an excommunicated bishop to return to the church, despite that bishop's many public statements denying the Holocaust. Today, the Vatican said the positions of Bishop Williamson on the Holocaust are absolutely unacceptable and firmly rejected by the Holy Father. But is that enough to end the uproar? Here's Dan Harris.
The latest public relations fiasco for Pope Benedict centers around this man.
I believe there were no gas chambers.
He's a British bishop named Richard Williamson, a longtime Holocaust denier who recently said this.
The Germans have a guilt complex about their having gassed 6 million Jews, but I don't think 6 million Jews were gassed.
Those comments were broadcast one day before Pope Benedict announced that he was lifting the excommunication of Bishop Williamson, provoking a rare public rebuke from Germany's chancellor and from outraged Jewish groups. The Vatican insists the Pope didn't know about Bishop Williamson's controversial Holocaust comments. They say what the Pope was really trying to do was to bring Williamson back into the fold as a way of healing a long-running rift between the Vatican and right-wing Catholics.
The Vatican has rather spectacularly failed to communicate that logic to the outside world.
In fact, in his first public appearance after the scandal broke, the Pope hosted a group of circus performers before he went on to express his full and unquestionable solidarity with the Jews. Today, the Vatican demanded that Bishop Williamson renounce his Holocaust denials, which may very well calm things down. But this is part of a troublesome pattern for the Pope. In 2006, he gave a speech that included a quote about Islam being evil, which set off riots around the world.
Clearly, public relations is not a high priority of this pontificate.
Some worry these continuing PR problems may undermine Benedict's papacy, taking away from his fight for peace and social justice.
Well, none of that message is getting through because it's overwhelmed by these disastrous decisions that are overshadowing the good things that he does.
As of tonight, Bishop Williamson has apologized to the Pope for causing him embarrassment, but not for what he said about the Holocaust. Dan Harris, ABC News, New York.
Our closer look for tonight. There's one other note from overseas. The government of the Central Asian nation of Kyrgyzstan says it wants to close a critical U.S. airbase used to supply U.S. troops fighting in Afghanistan. The air route is especially important in light of recent attacks by militants on supply routes on the ground. Just yesterday, a key bridge on the main road from Pakistan to Afghanistan was destroyed, stranding supply vehicles. Coming up, a bold new approach to fighting one of the deadliest forms of cancer.
Tomorrow, for the first time, hear the pilot's last words to the control tower. Minutes before the U.S. Airways plane hit the icy waters of the Hudson, what really happened? The tapes that tell all. Tomorrow, the drama before the miracle landing on World News with Charles Gibson.
What could be a new trend? The average age of first-time mothers in the United States is getting younger. It's only a slight decline from 25.2 years to 25. As for the why, some experts point to demographic changes, others to a shift in attitude, with younger women deciding they can balance work and family. Next, we're going to look at a radical new treatment showing promise in the fight against one of the deadliest forms of cancer. Wherever cancer starts, in the breast or colon or skin, it often spreads to the liver. 200,000 Americans get a grim diagnosis of liver cancer each year. But now, some hope from an experimental approach. John McKenzie reports on Medicine on the Cutting Edge.
Linda Campbell had already beaten a rare form of skin cancer, or so she thought. Then last summer, doctors discovered the tumors had spread to her liver.
They told me there were so many that they couldn't count them.
Linda learned few patients survive more than a year.
There was a lot of crying. You know, we weren't sure what to do.
Her doctor suggested this clinical trial, testing a new, radically different type of chemotherapy.
We're rolling.
By targeting just the cancer site, they would flood her liver with 10 times the dose of a standard chemo drug.
When you can increase the dose of chemotherapy into a region of the body where there are tumors present, you're going to get increased effectiveness.
The challenge until now, how to do it safely. Here in this experimental technique, doctors thread a tube up to the liver, and for the next 30 minutes, they saturate it with chemotherapy. To prevent the drug from reaching the rest of the body, doctors capture the blood, now loaded with chemo, as it leaves the liver. It's passed through an external filter to remove the chemo, and the blood then safely put back into the body. After 4 monthly treatments, images show liver tumors shrank in 50% of patients. Early indications are Linda's tumors are starting to respond. And with the treatment so focused, there are few side effects.
I am surprised at how good I feel afterwards.
Linda does not know if or when her cancer will start growing again. But she figures the targeted therapy could provide precious time.
I'm not ready to die. And I figured if this can prolong my life, you know, for even a couple years, I'm willing to take it. Come on.
Prolonging life and the simple joys it brings. John McKenzie, ABC News, Lexington, North Carolina.
Perhaps some help for what is a real difficult kind of cancer. We have one passing to note tonight. During his more than 3 decades in broadcast news, including 30 years here at ABC, Ben Blank was considered the father of television news graphics. Beginning with handmade displays, his ideas led to the computer-generated images we use today, helping viewers to understand an increasingly complex world. Blank pioneered the use of images behind the anchor, an idea adopted by news programs around the world. He won an Emmy for his work for the ABC News program Primetime Live. Ben Blank was 87. Up next, On Location, the new way to let people track your every move. But would you want them to? Finally tonight, no place to hide. Over the years, technology has made it harder to get away from it all. People know they can track you down on your cell phone to talk. But starting today, people can really track you down on your cell phone and follow your every move. Here's John Berman.
A lot of us use GPS technology for directions so we don't get lost.
Approaching right turn.
But here's a question. Just because you don't want to get lost, does that really mean you want to be found? That's the paradox of the latest software from Google called Latitude. If you load it on your BlackBerry or smartphone, it lets friends, family, whomever you want, track where you are.
I think that it's exciting because it lets you know where your friends are. I think a big jump forward in cell phones is location awareness.
The software uses cell phone towers and Wi-Fi connections to plot your position on a map. It's a notion that some parents like.
It sounds like a great idea if you wanted to keep track of where your kids have gone.
Joey, how do you feel about this? Do you want your mom to be able to find you wherever you go?
Yes.
But not all kids are as excited as Joey.
They should take our word, not hunt us down by a phone or a computer.
Let's face it, there are times when you don't want parents or bosses knowing exactly where you are in the middle of the day, when you're supposed to be writing a story. But Google says it's going to great ends to make sure your privacy is protected, even posting instructions on YouTube.
Here are some tips on how to adjust your privacy settings in Latitude.
Only people you choose can see you. You can limit it so friends only see what city you're in, and you can shut it off altogether.
How would you feel about Brittany being able to know where you are at all times?
I don't know about that.
What if you get kidnapped? I want to know where you're at.
The privacy paradox going mobile. John Berman, ABC News. You can see it right there, New York.
But we can assure you we'll be here every night at 6:30. That's World News for this Wednesday. I'm Charlie Gibson, and I hope you had a good day. For all of us at ABC News, have a good night.